That's leadership. That's the kind of thing that I get to see all the time out there in the field. No high fives. Now, that faith is not staged. These guys aren't going out on a football field on a Friday night. They're going into mortal combat with an enemy who wants to die killing them. And please don't misunderstand me. These are guys who can take vulgarity to the level of a new art form. I've heard it, I've seen it. But they're also not afraid to kneel down and pray or be seen reading from this book. And that's the kind of courage we need right now in this country. I seriously doubt that Vito O'Rourke or any of his lefty losers who were on CNN last night are going to tell those government employees to stop praying on government time. We have to lead. You cannot, by the way, lead from behind. You have to model the behavior you expect from others. Servant leaders are the best leaders I've ever seen. Now, what do I mean by a servant leader? Think of this. How did you learn to tie your shoes? Someone knelt down in front of you and showed you how to do it. They didn't do PowerPoint. They didn't give you a video. Someone, probably mom or dad, most of our cases, knelt down in front of you. What's the role model for that? Jesus in the upper room, Thursday night, before he's going to be crucified, make the ultimate sacrifice for all of us. Jesus Christ does what? He wraps a towel around himself, takes a pan of water, and he washes their feet in an ultimate act, as we think of it in temple terms, of a servant. That's who normally did that, sometimes a slave. That's the kind of leadership that we have to demonstrate. That's the kind of leadership we have to be part of. My Freedom Alliance, the general was kind enough, has led the way in looking after the veterans on active duty, the family members. We awarded over $15 million in college scholarships for the children of those who lost their lives fighting this long war. And every other one coming up. We've got youngsters in college today who lost a dad in the Vietnam War. We have to realize that the company we keep really matters. The company we keep is going to define you, who you are, those with whom you surround yourselves, to hold you accountable, encourage you in failure, admonish you to humility. Those are the people that we need on our side in this long fight. Fact of life, and I tell this to my grandkids, those with whom you associate are going to define who you are. Those who have integrity and the guts to just say no to unethical behavior. You can change things for the better. Don't let a day pass without saying, how can I help you? Never promise more than you can deliver, because unfulfilled expectations are the greatest cause of anger on the planet Earth. Think about it. How we behave is more important than what we say, but how we say it matters. I tell my grandkids, I'm not going to raise my voice with you, and I've succeeded so far. I got 18 of them now, 11 boys, 7 girls. I'd like to take some credit, but they're all born between September 15th and November 15th. Tell me what's going on in the wintertime. Just do the math. I got hurt overseas, and I couldn't ski last year, so I took them all. I was the chauffeur. 8-year-old ski school in a Suburban. 10-year-old ski school, get ready to roll. And so I drove back and forth. And as I'm coming back into the ski place that Betsy rents every year out in West Virginia, at Snowshoe. I'm coming back in, and as I walk in, there comes one of the little girls, boom, 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 down the stairs. And I catch her at the bottom. You know, it's a ski place, so the carpets are that thick. She's not hurt, but her ego is, she's whimpering a little bit. And I walk up because I know exactly what happened. The boy is standing right up there who just did it. I mean, I may be crazy, but I'm not stupid. And I walk up to him without shouting. You just pushed your sister down the stairs. You apologize right now. And he looks up at me, he's my first name. He says, sir, that's not my sister, that's my cousin. Now, whoever he is. My other guidepost for my 11 grandsons is marry a Proverbs 31 wife. I did, and you marry up. A lot of you guys know what I'm talking about. If you don't know, when you get back to the hotel tonight, pull out the Bible, the Gideon Bible, and read Proverbs 31, because it's the greatest kind of thing you can do. Last, let me just wrap this up real quick. Promote heroes. Promote heroes every way you possibly can. I've been blessed to be able to keep coming with heroes. And not all of my heroes are in uniform. I was approached by the Carnegie Hero Commission to see if we could do something to help show what heroes look like who aren't in uniform. So I want to just give you a little tease, and shameless self-promotion, we're looking for sponsors. But this is what the Carnegie Heroes program only gives medals to those who are American. The act of heroism has to be at risk of your own life trying or succeeding to save the life of another. Here's one.
It was a warm October night. My wife and I were getting ready for bed. All of a sudden I heard this loud crash. I knew immediately it was going to be a motor vehicle accident. Started walking up this way to the only car that I saw at this time. As I got to the back of her car, she got out and she was panicking that she hit somebody. She don't know what happened.
She's yelling, "Where's the person I hit?" And as I got to the front of the car, I spotted the headlights of the car down the tracks, and I screamed to Pete, the car's down the track.
It's now pitch black. And as I'm running down the tracks, these signal gates come down. I yelled to her, I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" She goes, "I think I got into an accident. I think a car hit me." She didn't know she was on the tracks.
The lights were flashing. I could see the headlights coming around the bend, and I just kept waving my arms, trying to stop the train, screaming, "Stop, stop."
And now I can actually see the lights of the train, the horns blaring, the signal crossing, and ding, 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 all these noises and lights. God, please don't let her foot be trapped.
It was either win or lose. He was either going to get her out and get to cover, or they were both going to die.
There was no other time. It was now or never. We were going to live or die together.
The train just passed, and all I heard was the crash. And I'm just standing there screaming and screaming. There's no way he could have made it out of it.
Tune in for the rest of the story. Remarkably enough, all those interviewed for this show talk about their faith in God. And you can hear it in some of the cases, people shouting from nearby, pray for them. My urging for you is that you become like the most crucial element of all the military isn't all those remarkable technologies and the like. Actually, it's because we've got recruiters and logisticians. And I'm urging you, I'm asking you to commit to being a logistician and a recruiter. And what do recruiters do? Recruiters bring in the force that fights with what they have, with the weapons that are made for them. And I'm asking you to make a commitment. Recruit just one person you know who's not here tonight, but will be here next year. And that's something you can do. And all you have to do is, you don't have to tell Tony, you don't have to tell the general. Just do it. Become a recruiter for what is right. Show them the kind of courage you saw when those young Marines circled around, thanking God that Dexter and Smitty were going with them. And not one of those guys got hurt. Not those that were with that helicopter, dog, and that brave man. Second, logisticians. What's a logistician do? In the military, a logistician delivers bombs, beans, bullets, and band-aids. And in organizations like FRC and Freedom Alliance, logisticians deliver bucks. They all begin with B. But I'm urging you that if you become a recruiter and a logistician, you're going to change the outcome. The left that you saw just in those 16 seconds intends to do to this country. And I want to make it very personal. Those 18 grandchildren that the good Lord lent my best friend and me, they deserve better than what that crowd of lefty crazy. I just said a few moments ago, don't just talk about it, do it. So let me just show you how it's done. Everybody see those up there? Hey, Gil, you coming out? Come on out. These are $9 a piece. These are going to be sent to every member of Congress. They're going to send as many as they can sell. And they're selling for $9 a piece, right? And I want you to remember, I didn't say just talk about it. Show it. I did that with my grandkids. I'm doing it with you. There's my $10. Keep the other dollar for FRC and send one of those to Nancy Pelosi with my name on it. The general and I are talking about slogans, and they have press delivery. I sent for Fidelis. I just want you to know, in my organization that I grew up in, starting in 1961, that's more than a slogan. Always faithful is a way of life. God bless you.
Physician in private practice, and he serves on the board of Bethel Church of Reading and is the co-chair of the American College of Pediatricians Committee on Adolescent Sexuality. He is a former naval officer and a media spokesperson for the Christian Medical and Dental Association. He works with Alliance Defending Freedom and advises the global medical research. He also teaches a course on bioethics for the Bethel School of Ministry. And Kathy Grace Duncan was born female but lived for 11 years as a male. 27 years ago, she came out of that lifestyle, and her story is one of freedom and redemption through her relationship with Jesus Christ. Have her tell her story. She is a women's ministry leader at the Portland Fellowship, where she co-leads a small group and mentors and teaches Taking Back Ground program. She is also the chairwoman of the Portland Fellowship Board of Directors. And we're going to start with Lynn. Lynn.
Good morning. I had a dream. Maybe you can identify. I held my babies. I read to them. I fed them healthy food most of the time. I invested in their education. I cheered them on. I prayed for them. I worried about them. And I loved them with all my heart. I dreamed that they would one day grow up to be happy, healthy, and successful people who reached their potential and impacted the world. I now call that my antebellum life. I never dreamed that 2 of my 3 children would grow up to experience mutilating surgery and cross-sex hormone treatments. I never dreamed that I would be villainized and shut out of their lives for being concerned and skeptical. That my daughter, who grew up riding horses, playing with dolls, wearing dresses, loving makeup, having sleepovers, would change her name, undergo a double mastectomy, and take testosterone in high doses, which will likely result in her needing a hysterectomy before she is 30. I never dreamed that 2 of my 3 children would be sterilized, and I never realized until I lived this nightmare that there are thousands of fractured families and broken dreams and parents whose dreams are shattered. We have nowhere to go for support. If we ask for help, this is what we are told. You should be proud of your son for finding his true self. Wouldn't you rather have a live son than a dead daughter? I'm sure if you work a little harder, you can use those correct pronouns. Don't ever call him that name again. That's his dead name. You're traumatizing him. After my story was published in the Christian Post, I began hearing from parents all over the world. The stories are remarkably similar and devastating. Loving, caring parents are watching helplessly as their children's lives are suddenly and dramatically transformed from dreams to nightmares. There is nowhere to turn, as teachers and doctors and therapists have a one-size-fits-all agenda for any young person who declares that they want to be a different gender. No questions are allowed. It is full steam ahead to the gender clinic for hormones, a breast finder, surgery, and a new name and identity. And I'm going to tell you that not one of these parents have told me about their child who is happy and suddenly thriving into a new and confident self. These kids are struggling, just like mine. Their lives become all about being trans. College and career life plans are put on hold, sometimes indefinitely. And these kids are incredibly fragile. They don't know who they are anymore. Every word, every expression, every action of their parents and everyone else around them is interpreted and examined as their identity somehow depends on the acceptance and affirmation of the world around them. And everyone is required to say and believe only things that affirm their new gender. Any other issues they are experiencing are swept under the carpet. Most of them are suffering from anxiety, depression, social struggles, body anxiety, and a lot of them are on the autism spectrum. But parents' concerns about these significant issues, we're hearing more and more stories of these sisters. Young people have gone through transition, and after a few years, they've come to deeply regret these decisions. And these young people will carry the scars of the gender industry for the rest of their lives. They are young women with broken voices, permanent body and facial hair, male pattern baldness, scarred and flat chests, sterility, atrophy and permanent damage of their reproductive organs, their arms forever damaged, scarred, and weakened from radial phalloplasty surgery. Look it up, it's sad. Mutilated genitalia, loss of sexual function, increased risk of heart disease, bone loss, and overwhelming psychological trauma. Their existence is minimized because their stories are inconvenient to an industry committed to helping young people fight their own bodies. How do the doctors and the therapists and the teachers know which kids are going to grow up to deeply regret these treatments and to realize that there was nothing wrong with their healthy bodies to start with. How many mutilated kids is too many? And how are we tolerating this? As parents, we are terrified, we're alone, we're unsupported, we are blamed, we're grieving, and we're lost. There are untold numbers of us, thousands. We can't even find each other. We are silenced, afraid to speak up, to stand for truth and health and wholeness for our own children. If we do, often our children will leave us, claiming that we are hateful, bigoted Nazis. They will be supported in this view by the online community, the courts, Planned Parenthood, and the culture at large, as the majority is not supporting actual truth. We are caught in an unbelievably difficult and untenable place. We are silenced, and we are devastated. The time is now to demand that rigorous scientific research is done to examine the safety and efficacy of medical transition for children. It's time to require accountability. It's time to listen to the parents and to the young people who have been scarred and broken. I beseech you, we need to demand better for our kids and our families.
Dr. Demo, give us some sense of the science behind this movement.
We've given 4 questions to answer for you in 10 minutes, which on the bright side, that's 4 times more time than the California legislature has ever given me testifying against these bills. Brain development. That prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobe of the brain, doesn't fully develop until someone's 23 or 25 years of age. And that's the brain's judgment and inhibition center. The amygdala is the primary emotional center, and that's not mature in a teenager either, nor is its connection to that frontal lobe. That means kids think, but they tend to think emotionally. Now, children have developing brains, their minds change often, they can't project out to long-term consequences. This has implications. The Swedish Pediatric Society, interestingly enough, just this year, given this unfettered right to make life-altering changes when they don't have the mental capacity to project what it means is, and I quote, not scientifically founded and contrary to medical practice. Now, what are children experiencing? Terminology here. Gender is an engineered term. It is linguistics leveraged against biology. Nouns have gender. People have asex. Gender identity, it's a feeling. It's a self-perception. Usually a sex stereotype. Interesting coming from groups that supposedly so hate stereotypes. Gender dysphoria and transgenderism are not the same. Gender dysphoria is a diagnosis. Great discomfort with your biological sex. That's gender dysphoria. Transgenderism is an overarching ideological term. Prevalence. According to the DSM-5 of the American Psychiatric Association, prevalence in males of gender dysphoria is somewhere between 0.0005% and 0.014%. For females, between 0.002 and 0.003. Infinitesimal. And yet now we're told 2% of America's youth identify as maybe I'm trans. Something changed, and it can't have been biology or genetics. Desistance, that's the norm for gender dysphoria. Desistance means it tends to go away on its own, usually by adolescence, most often by adulthood. What percentage are we talking about? A very strong case can be made from a broad spectrum of the medical literature across the Western world that is 85% and up. This should have consequences in terms of our thinking. Mental health, I could spend an hour talking about this. An overwhelming percentage of people with gender dysphoria have underlying mental health issues and or neurodevelopmental problems, by which I mean autism primarily. They also have a large amount of personality disorders, and quite often that's narcissism. And I'm not meaning to just have one or the other. You can have a whole pool of these things. Why autism spectrum? Because autistic kids tend to think concretely. They tend to latch on to ideas. And then they're coached into the idea that I know I am different now. I'm trans. And then how do you get that idea out of their head? Until it's way too late. Autogynephilia, common in adult males, is a subgroup of the transgender ideology, gender dysphoria. And that's the tendency of men to be sexually aroused by the thoughts or image of themselves as a woman. and then the rest takes it up from there. Now, what about rapid onset gender dysphoria? That's the sudden presentation of gender dysphoria in pubescent or post-pubescent kids who didn't show any sign of it before whatsoever. Dr. Lisa Littman at Brown University in 2018 did a landmark study on this, and they found certain hallmarks amongst them. One or more of their friends became gender dysphoric or trans-identified recently. We're seeing now, perhaps, read about this in the papers, heard on the news, of like cheerleading squads in high school, where 3 or 4 of the cheerleaders come out as trans together. Statistically, that's impossible. Why is that happening? The parents found that their kids had increasing use of social media and the web before the declaration, worsening the child's mental health the further this went on, worsening isolation from family and from any non-trans identified friends, and a strong distrust of any information that came from non-trans affirming sites. Now, it's a social contagion is the way this thing is spreading now. I know there are some who deny it. It's self-evident. Puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and their long-term side effects. Now keep in mind, we're talking immature developing brains being imposed upon by ideology, and then hormones hits that, and it's a bad mix. The international standard of care for gender dysphoria is watchful waiting. Now that implies psychological evaluation extensively of the child and the family. It doesn't mean doing nothing, like one legislator argued against me. What we're seeing now, UK's Tavistock Centre, which is the only gender identity clinic in the NIH, is coming under strong criticism from many quarters to explain what exactly is going on, because things don't look right. The Swedish Pediatric Society, together with the Swedish National Council for Medical Ethics, as well as separately the Royal Australasian College of Physicians, that are either directly calling for or have already instituted a national top-to-bottom reevaluation. What is going on with this gender-affirming therapy with kids? It's not looking right, and it shouldn't. Why is providing skilled psychological intervention, which is again the international standard of care, being shamed as transphobic? There's underlying causes. There always are. They tend to be multiple. They don't go away with gender affirmation therapy. Those will be the seeds of regret. When you've done something to your body, you can't take back. What's gone is gone, and then you realize your problems are still there. And that's when the suicide risk really skyrockets. I said in an interview recently, since the American mental health establishment has largely given up on their jobs of investigating underlying factors, contributory factors, what we're left with is the cult of affirmation, and it very much operates like one. Now, puberty blocking agents, as reversible as we've been led to believe, if you go with the Endocrine Society guidelines, puberty blocking at Tanner stage 2, that's before puberty is hit. Menarche doesn't happen. Spermarch doesn't happen. Spermanova won't develop. The child's external genitalia will remain stunted. A little girl who's got menopausal genitalia, you've got a boy who is highly likely not to be able to experience orgasm or ejaculation. That's a problem. And fewer than 5% of the kids entering this gender-affirming therapy don't even attempt fertility preservation. And by the way, if you're getting puberty blocked at Tanner stage 2, there's nothing to preserve developed yet. Interestingly, on the subject of cross-sex hormones, just this past week, the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Medicine, which is a big endocrinology journal in America, reported this big international panel that concluded that the only evidence indication for testosterone therapy for women is for treatment of what's called hypoactive sexual desire disorder. They went on to say there's insufficient data to support the use of testosterone for the treatment of any other symptom or clinical condition. It's like the left hand did what the right hand was doing. Potential harms, you've already heard some of them. But why are there potential harms? Because I've heard some of these studies, you might say, well, all we're doing is taking what's a biological female and giving male levels of testosterone, which he identifies and vice versa. Let's translate that. You're taking a biological female body and administering 20 to 40 times the amount of testosterone that body would ever see outside of an endocrine tumor, vice versa for men. That means you're maxing out on the possibility of complications. And they involve compromised fertility and sexual dysfunction, dyslipidemias, which means high cholesterol and what comes with that, thromboembolic disease, blood clots, cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease, so we're talking strokes and heart attacks, osteoporosis and various cancers. The bone mineral density thing you've heard referred to a few times, those pubertal years are when the bones experience the greatest increase of density in your life, but not on puberty markers. So what does that mean? Is a kid in their 30s and their 40s going to have osteoporosis? Could well be, but we don't know. We can't tell them they won't, right? The myth of buying time. Puberty blockers are sold as a pause button, a wait and see. They're not. It commits a child to a route of action. You are changing, you are intervening what likely would have been desistance, and you're committing it now to persistence. The myth of suicide reduction. The classic line that parents are being bullied with, do you want a live son or a dead daughter? What kind of intimidation is that? Who's an extremist with the situation, right? Bailey and Blanchard, two very famous psychology professors in the world of, let's say, alternate sexuality, they said, there is no persuasive evidence that gender transition reduces gender dysphoric children's likelihood of killing themselves. And the idea that mental health problems, including suicidality, are caused by gender dysphoria rather than the other way around is perfectly popular, politically correct, and unproven. Stigma, we hear that all the time too. 2016 study examined 40 years of data in children referred for gender dysphoria, and they said that once they controlled for general behavior problems, stigma was not a significant predictor of suicide or suicidality. Ethical considerations, my fourth and final point. Well, what are the self-evident ethics of medicalizing forever something that had an 85% rate of desistance and doing it based on a self-diagnosis? The ethics of permanently medicalizing someone like that obviously is highly suspect. There is no lab. There is no imaging study. There's no test that I or any other physician can do to a gender dysphoric kid, or excuse me, to a kid in general, to know who will be the so-called true trans and who will desist. How can a child consent to that? How can an adolescent? How can a parent? They can't. There's a paper by a psychologist, Levine, going over the details of consent. He points out pretty clearly the holes in this program. And when a child, when anybody, undergoes so-called gender affirmation therapy, patient for the rest of their life, need those hormones, and then they will likely need treatment for the complications. Whatever amount of surgery they engage, fighting their body's attempt to repair itself for the rest of their life. They're a patient forever, to the profit of people who shouldn't be making profit off of this kind of thing. This mirrors the tragedy of the lobotomy movement of the 50s. Psychological organizations pushing it, saying, okay, this is modern, this is science, the way it should be. And for that matter, the 1920s eugenics, forced sterilization movement. And my state of California was eyebrow deep in both of them, and we shouldn't be involved in this.
Great. Share with us your incredible story.
Now let me tell you what God can do. So I was born a girl, and before I went to kindergarten at the ages of 3 and 4, I would ride my tricycle over to pick up my girlfriend because I believed I should have been born a boy. Before I went to kindergarten, I already had the idea that I should have been born a boy. I grew up continuing with that idea that I was born into the wrong body. Between the ages of 10 and 12, I was also sexually molested by a family member. Looking back, the Lord has shown me that what I believed back then, watched my dad, who was verbally and emotionally abusive to my mom. And I watched my mom crumble underneath that abuse. And so that lie was presented to me as women are weak, women are vulnerable, and women are hated. And I looked at my mom and I realized, oh, I'm going to grow up to be that. I don't want to be that. I'm going to be a man. But I don't want to be the man that my dad is. So I will be the man that my dad is not, and I will rescue women. That was my belief system. Did I know that then? No. I didn't have the tools to filter to see that my dad was abusive. He was narcissistic. So as I continued to grow with that, at 7 years old, my little brother was born and he was adored. And that also told me that me as a woman can be replaced. And in order to have that affirmation, I needed to be a man. So I bought the lie, hook, line, and sinker. At the age of 16, I got a car and I began to live a double life. I was dating girls and telling my parents I was going to hang out with friends. At the age of 19, it grew so much so that I had to go live as a man. And so I moved out of the house and I began the 4 months and I changed my name over. 2 weeks later, I moved in with a family and she had 2 daughters that were 14 and 12. They invited me to their youth group, so I went. After I changed my name, I got saved. Because the Lord didn't strike me dead, I accepted the Lord 3 times because I wanted to be sure it was going to work. Because the Lord didn't strike me dead or say that I had to go back or anything that I was doing was wrong, I thought he was okay with it. So I continued to live as a man. I had lost my job thanks to my dad. He went into my employer and said, "This is not a man who's working for you, this is my daughter." And I immediately got fired. So I got another job, and at this job I met a Christian woman, and we began to date. And she showed me as a Christian I should be reading my Bible. So I began to read my Bible, not understanding really the word that was being said in there. And after dating for quite a while, we broke up. We had both been involved in this church, and she decided to go find a different church, and I stayed. Well, right after the breakup, I jumped into another relationship. Rebound, thank you. So I rebounded into this relationship, and a year later, after dating this woman, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, she's my mom and I'm my dad. And I thought, I can't do this. I don't want to be him, and I don't want her to be my mom. So I broke up with her. Upon breaking up, I got more involved in the church because I had more time now. And one night, I had joined the orchestra practice, and one night on my way to the orchestra practice, the Lord said to me, "Will you now? Will you now?" And so I took this inventory of my life, and I thought, I have nothing to lose right now. I have nothing to stop me. And I said, "Yes, Lord, I will." 3 months later, okay, so I'm a little slow on the process here. I was addicted, heavily addicted to pornography. During that year relationship of the abusive one with the woman, I went to pornography for comfort. When I said, "Yes, I will" to the Lord, he delivered me that night from pornography, and I am still free. So I continued to dive into the church. I was fascinated by the Lord. I wanted to know him. I wanted to know more of him. The Lord brought to me some spiritual parents, and he began to work on my dad issues, though I didn't understand what was going on. All I knew is this guy was making me cry a lot. I just love it on me. The more I got involved in church, they began to see, hey, this guy's leadership material. The next thing I know, I'm leading a men's Bible study. I have a junior high boys small group. I'm in leadership at the singles, and then I'm also part of the adults, and then I was just known everywhere. It came about that through a bunch of circumstances that they had found out. Let me back up. I had told my spiritual parents about where I was, that I was actually once a woman. When I first got saved, at the job I was at, the woman I worked with also went to church with me, and she told the pastors, "Oh, I heard this about Keith." That was my name. So they called me in, and I told them that I was a man who used to be a woman. And when they heard that, they said, "We love you, but you can't come back here." So that was the church I was saved at. So I got confronted at this church that I was attending. I was asked the very same question. "We're hearing some rumors about you, and we just want to know, who are you? Who are you really?" And so I said to them, and I told the truth this time. I said, "I'm a woman living as a man." And when I did, the Holy Spirit went and blew into me. And I saw the next 2 weeks and everything that I had to do, and I had to go back to being the woman that he created me to be. So as I sat there in front of the pastor, having all this knowledge of what the Lord just showed me, I said to him, "So what do you think I should do?" He's like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, let me share with you what the Lord showed me." He's like, "Okay." So I said, "Well, first I need to go back to being the woman that God created me to be."